The African Development Bank is leading calls to reset the global financial system to overcome persistent barriers that result in Africa facing the world's highest borrowing costs. At this year's UN General Assembly and the 4th International Conference on Financing for Development, Africa Development Bank's chief economist and senior officials have emphasized that traditional aid is inadequate and unsustainable for Africa's needs. Instead, they argue for increased long-term concessional financing, more inclusive participation in global financial decisions, and the urgent reform of the world's debt architecture to reflect Africa's priorities. Reforms being advocated include expanding Africa's own development funds, mobilizing unused international resources like the IMF's special drawing rights or SDRs, and channeling them from wealthy countries to African-led institutions to support real development goals. A centerpiece of this push is the African Development Fund, which provides low-interest loans and grants to lower-income African countries. Historically, much of the fund's financing has come from traditional Western donors, including the United States, France, and Japan. This reliance underscores an ongoing paradox. Even as the African Development Bank calls for a more equitable global financial system, it remains dependent on the very frameworks it seeks to reform. Now, the fund faces uncertainty. The United States, historically one of its top donors, has announced a proposed $555 million reduction to its support for the next replenishment cycle, the upcoming round of donor funding. This cut raises the risk of a significant funding gap for critical development initiatives in Africa. Africa Development Bank leaders are now emphasizing partnership, domestic resource mobilization, and reform, making clear that Africa needs sustainable financing. Heading into this year's World Bank IMF annual meetings in October in Washington, D.C., the central question for global financial leaders is clear. Will they maintain the old order or help build a truly more equitable system?